Welcome to African Affairs, a television program on Africa. We're now in the studio of DCTV, Washington, D.C., United States of America. Our guest today is Sister Patricia Nena Ebebulem. We are honored with her presence in the program today. Sister Patricia Nena Ebebulem was born at Ahihana in Imo State, Nigeria. She is a Catholic nun, a sister of St. Louis. She got her Bachelor's of Arts degree in English from the University of Ibadan, a MSc in School Administration from Boston College in the United States of America. Sister Patricia has served as a principal of high schools in Nigeria for 13 years. She is former provincial superior of the Sisters of St. Louis, Nigeria. She is former president of the Nigerian Conference of Women Leaders. And she is now on sabbatical at the School of Applied Theology, Berkeley, California. Welcome to our program, Sister.
Thanks very much.
Today we are going to be talking about a program that she has been involved with. That is women trafficking and prostitution, a global concern. Sister, people have read a lot about this problem. How did you originally learn about this problem, and how did you get involved in this traffic in women and its attendant consequence of prostitution?
Yeah, thanks very much. No, the trafficking in women, and I think before I say how I got involved, if you wouldn't mind, I would really like to define what I'm talking about, so that when I begin to say how I got involved, people will be able to follow.
Very good.
Because when you talk of prostitution, you have what we call free prostitution, and the one that is our concern, that is the trafficking. And this trafficking is recruiting women and girls for forced commercial prostitution and transporting them abroad under false pretenses. I think the key words there are the false pretenses and the forced, the forcing them. Now, how we got involved in this, like as women religious, we run schools, we work with many young people. And around 1997, we noticed that many of our young girls were disappearing from institutions, we are disappearing from the society, and it became common knowledge that some girls were being deceived. People will just come, as I said, under false pretense, come to them and tell them they have jobs and better opportunities for them abroad, and invite them, the girls usually in those countries, especially in the developing countries, who wouldn't want to go overseas and go abroad. There's a craze for that. So many of them would go out. And we knew really what was happening to them there, that it wasn't that they were suffering and that it was a terrible, a criminal act, most inhuman. So the women religious in Nigeria, with our counterparts in Italy, because most of them were going to Italy, so with our counterparts in Italy, we decided that we would network. Like they invited us and we arranged for us to go there and see actually what was happening, and then share with them, because they also wanted to know the background of these girls who are coming, so as to be able to help them, because they needed a lot of help, pastoral care as human beings and all that. So that was really, how we got involved. And then, myself, my secretary, and another sister, the chairman. Okay, again, even before we traveled, when we got involved, we decided that to be able to tackle this problem, we will need to form a committee. And the first thing we did, because unfortunately, this evil or this phenomenon is more predominant in certain parts of the country, like in the Benin side, Edo Delta states, as we say, but as I said, it's everywhere. So we decided to start a committee that we call the Committee for the Support of the Dignity of Women. And you know, the chairperson of that committee then and the secretary of our conference and myself traveled to Italy, you know, to go and see what was happening. And, well...
That is, I think that explanation is making people to understand how you got involved and the origin of this problem, which is plaguing women in many parts of Africa and the world. Now, what do you think is responsible for this problem? I know you have stated that people come to these girls under false pretenses. They lure them to Italy. They are going to give them jobs. Why would girls succumb to these promises? Why are people trafficking in women and leading them to prostitution? I know you have said that these men want to use the women, traffic in them, get money for themselves. What the point I'm trying to ask is, what was the situation for these women that would make them accept such promises outside their country?
You know, like when we met with the girls in Italy and Germany, we met them on the streets, and that experience will come later. But there and then, you know, from what they said, you will know what led them to it. Poverty. You know, many of them said, look, they had nobody to pay their school fees. And actually, the individuals that we met, there was one girl who was in a polytechnic. She was having some problem paying her school fees. And somebody came and said, why are you bothering yourself trying to, you know, because even when you finish, are you sure you'll get a job? Whereas if you go to Italy or you go to Europe, within a short time you'll get a job. You know, you'll get a job there, you can pay us, because these girls wouldn't have the money to either buy the ticket or get passport or visa, any of those things. But these men would promise them, we will pay all that. And when you get there, you'll get a job, and within at most 6 months, you'll be able to pay us off. And then you'll work for yourself and get your money and go to school, and then you'll have a brighter future. And you see, unfortunately, there were some who had made it. Because especially when you go to Benin, you see some people in beautiful, luxurious cars. You see mansions. And once they see those ones, because they call them Italos, you know, those that have been to Italy. So these are the things that lure these girls away, you know, to go. And of course, our battered economy, when you are talking of, you know, the cause, is the abject poverty, really, especially with that goes with the battered economy in the developing countries. No employment, you know, so many of these girls, when there is no job and they can't pay their school fees, any opportunity that comes, you know, they take to it and then they go away. And also, you know, there are other problems, you know, besides the poor economy. You know, this is a highly gendered phenomenon. It's really women, trafficking of women and girls. And you know that in our society, unfortunately, women and girls are very much undervalued, because they don't get as much education, and so they are not able to compete, you know, favorably in the economic world. And as a result, you know, like many of them don't get enough education. So as a result, they are very, very vulnerable. And unfortunately, you see, these traffickers target the most vulnerable of the society. And this is why these girls are usually the ones that are taken away. And many of them, too, like with problems in societies, because it's not just Nigeria. Anywhere you have like this, the whole world is riddled with wars and problems. The women are the ones widowed. They are the ones without parents and all that. So you find that, you know, the widows, the divorced ones, you know, being easily enticed to such promises.
Yeah, but sister, one would disagree with you in a statement that you made, or one would argue that in our society, really, the women are not all that undervalued. They are not that relegated to the background as people tend to say. There are a lot of girls, like you said, who stay in the schools and graduate. There are lots of people who see this, who face this hardship, but they still know the vice in going abroad, you know, especially when they are not married. So these women, some of them stay, finish their education, get jobs. We have a lot of career women in many societies in Africa. So I think that sometimes, sometimes some of the women that are lured very easily are those
the greedy ones.
Exactly,
yes,
those that are very greedy.
I know.
Now, let us, having said that, what extent, to what extent is this problem, or can this problem be found? Is it worldwide? What countries and the continents are involved? Are these problems peculiar to a particular country, a particular continent, or a particular area?
Right, thank you. Before I go on to that, I would still like to touch on the last one, because I agree with you that to a great extent, women are no longer that undervalued, but a lot still has to be done to empower women, you know, and then I agree with greed. So having said that, this is a global issue. Actually, practically every country in the world is involved. Either a country of destination or a country from which these girls are and women are trafficked. And when you look at the pattern, you know, they are usually trafficked from developing countries. You know, poverty. It's poverty that leads them to it. So they are trafficked from developing countries to many of these developed countries. Like the time we went to 1998, when we went to Italy, at about that time, there were about 15,000 Nigerian girls being trafficked there. You had the Albanian girls, Romanian girls. There were about 30,000 Albanian girls in Europe at that time. You know, so that the pattern is, for example, in Africa, you have Nigeria, unfortunately, having a great number of them. You have them from Togo, from Benin, from Morocco, from Ghana. And usually those ones from Africa are trafficked to Europe. You get them in many of the countries in Europe. Now, the ones from the Philippines, from South Korea, East Asia, are usually trafficked to the United States, to Japan, to Singapore. Actually, Gabriela, one of the NGOs, you know, the Filipino NGOs, you know, said that there were about 600,000 Filipinos being trafficked between the United States and Japan. So it's a global issue, and unfortunately, too, it takes the same pattern. Like I've told you, the ones that are coming from Africa, they usually tell them they are going to get them jobs, or they are going to send them to school and all that. And when they get there, they tell them, look, this is what you're supposed to do. The ones from the Philippines, they also, you know, their recruiters will gather them together and teach them how to dance and teach them how to sing, maybe how to work in restaurants, and say that we are taking you over there to work in these places. Is also deception. When they get there, they have to, you know, go into prostitution. So it's quite global, and, you know, it's more or less the same pattern that they follow.
Okay, now you visited some countries to where these girls have been sent. When you went there, what was the condition? Was life all that bed of roses for them? Were they living luxuriously? I know you have said that in some areas in Nigeria, there are a lot of luxurious houses, and people ride on luxurious cars and call them Italos, showing that they came from these girls that went to Italy. But what is their plight in Italy?
Their plight in Italy is horrible, to say the least. Like when we saw these girls on the streets of Italy or in Germany, you know, in those places, our hearts were broken, our hearts bled, and we felt very much for the mothers. Because you see, these girls, I mean, we met them on the streets and they shared with us what they are subjected to. You see, as soon as they get to Italy or they get to Europe, their documents are taken from them. Those of them who have documents. And they are told, look, you cannot be given back these documents until you have paid the debt. And you will think that the debt they are expected to pay is the debt of passport, the debt of visa, the debt of flight ticket. No. They have to pay at least 50,000 US dollars to 80,000 US dollars to their madams or to their